All right, everyone. Welcome to a special Monday night edition of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. Wes and I are back from Nashville and watching the Broncos beat up on Northeastern. Uh, Tonight's edition of Goal Horns and Fight Songs is special because Wes was able to book a guest, and he was nice enough to join us, the athletic director for Western Michigan University, Dan Bartholomae. All right, everyone.
Wes, Mike, how are you? Thanks for having me on. Go Broncos.
I'm doing great. Like Mike said, we had a fun trip down in Nashville. Some things happened that we weren't necessarily expecting, but the Bridgestone crew did a great job of making sure that event took place and went off, and Western got the W. So I think everything concerned, it was a win for Bronco hockey.
Hey, once the clock hit zero, everybody was thrilled with the facility on our end. I can assure you that. That was an interesting call to wake up to that morning. We had a football game that day as well. So obviously, as you can imagine, on a day like that, I'm juggling a million things, and I get a call that the facility is flooded, and we're not sure if we're playing. So that was interesting news. But yeah, kudos to the events crew and that partner group for getting us on the ice, and great to get a win.
Yeah, that kind of leads us into our first question. So, in kind of a brief way, what does an AD do?
Wow.
Because I think most of us just kind of assume you're kind of the point guy between hiring and firing coaches, but I'm sure a lot more is involved in that than just kind of that aspect of it.
Yeah, probably the most important thing we do, right? Hiring coaches, because they spend the most time with our student athletes. But if you think about it, we, I consider to be college athletics. I consider college athletics to be an enterprise, and we are essentially the CEOs of that enterprise. So of course the coaches report to us as ADs, but we manage them. We don't just hire and fire them, right? We manage them.
Right.
We're trying to develop them and make them better and make our programs better, but we're responsible for budget. We're responsible for marketing, tickets, promotions, facilities, compliance, student athlete welfare, sports medicine. I mean, you name it, anything that touches our athletes is in the athletics department, and typically the AD runs all facets of the athletic department. So every day is actually quite different, but like any industry, you surround yourself with great people and you get the heck out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely more involved than I thought. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, do you actually ever sleep doing all of that? I mean, I know you said you woke up to the call about Bridgestone, but was that a 30-minute nap and then right back to it, or what?
Yeah, not well. I can assure you that. I call it a labor of love, right? I think those of us who are in this industry decided within the first 2 to 3 years of working in it that this was for us. And I started in compliance and student athlete development 21 years ago at the University of Pittsburgh, and I was doing 80-hour weeks working game operations for volleyball and wrestling, and I knew that that was just always going to be part of the deal. It was going to be long hours. It was going to be a lot of different and diverse constituent groups. That's what I loved about it, to be honest. I love the challenges, but in particular, I love the people. There's nothing better than working with young people, and not to mention young people, but the most talented young people you could ever imagine. Way better at what they're doing than I was at anything in life. So fun, energizing, and I wake up every day with a smile.
So you were at Oregon State. How were athletics different between there and what you're experiencing here at Western?
We didn't have hockey. No hockey in Oregon, as you can imagine. I'd say on maybe on a larger scale, the scale was different when you're at an Oregon State, right? Oregon State is a Power 5 institution. You've got a $90 million budget, and you're competing with schools with $120 million budgets. And then you go to the MAC, and the MAC, you've got more like-minded, institutions. I'm not in a conference with UCLA when I'm all the way up in Corvallis, Oregon, right? Our schools are very similar. Our budgets are similar. Our budgets are smaller. But what's nice about having hockey is that it gives me a taste of, Power 5 level programs in the NCHC, right? The NCHC is the best college hockey in the conference. So kind of a different level and different experience, not only having hockey, but being in two different conferences in the same institution. So with that said, the problems are the same. The challenges are the same. You just have to find different and more creative ways to solve them, I think, at a MAC and NCHC level than you necessarily would at a Pac-12 level.
And that kind of leads into another question that I had. Coming from Oregon State, football obviously being a Power Five conference, that's very popular. The rivalry with Oregon, everybody knows about that. The baseball team there, they've won 3 national championships in the last 16 years. But what is the balancing act coming to a school where hockey seems like it's the most popular sport as opposed to football or how well the baseball team is done? And that balancing act of you want to make sure all the sports get their support, but they just kind of lean a little bit more than others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said it spot on. It is a balancing act, right? And when you are at an institution that sponsors football at the level that we do, it remains the high tide that lifts all boats, right? It is, it's the largest, even when the crowd is small, it's still the largest crowd we get, right? The TV contracts are all specially focused on football. The donor engagement is and can be very football centric. So you never forget that success in football is going to drive success in all other sports. But that doesn't mean that you forget about the other ones, right? And so at least the way that I like to approach it is, what are your goals? Where do you want to be in each of your sports? And it might be different across different sports. And then you benchmark where you are versus where your peers are, and certainly your aspirational peers. And then you start making some decisions on allocating resources. Hockey for us, I equate it to baseball at Oregon State, right? It's a sport where we can absolutely positively win a national championship. It's got great community support. There's never going to be enough seats in the arena for us. It's an expensive sport that also drives and generates revenue. And so that's important. And so in a way, I'm always looking for new and creative ways to generate revenue in hockey to be able to fund hockey. So you don't take your eye off it. It is a huge priority for us. Having an excellent staff and being able to recruit an excellent staff and retain an excellent staff like we did with Firsch is important. And yeah, that costs money. So you've got to figure out the balances and quickly.
Were you a hockey fan before you got to Western? And if not, I'm pretty sure I'm sure you are now because I've seen you at games. But how much of that is an influence of both just the atmosphere at Lawson coming from the student section and kind of what we're seeing on ice? Because you jumped in at a high point of Bronco hockey here.
Yeah, it was like the most ridiculous time to walk in the door. Awesome. I walked in for the North Dakota series last year when we were number one. Like, I think we were, if we weren't number one in the country, we were about to be. So yeah, great question. I grew up in Pittsburgh. So I was 10, 11, 12. I won't date myself too much here when Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr were winning their first Stanley Cups. And so if you live in the city of Pittsburgh and one of your teams is winning, you follow that team. So I got into hockey that way. Admittedly, not a season ticket holder in hockey in Pittsburgh. Probably went to a few more Pirates games than hockey games. But I made it to the old Igloo. And then when I was working at Pitt and back there, I made it to PPG Paints Arena. And then, of course, I was there for Sid Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury. So I saw a lot of Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh in my day. So I appreciated the sport and I understood it and I followed it. I had never followed it on the intercollegiate level. So I worked at Pitt and I worked at Oregon State. And I had to be honest in my job interview when they asked me what I knew about intercollegiate hockey. I knew very, very little. And I will tell you, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll give you a couple of stories. One, of course, coming in that first North Dakota weekend, sitting with the Lawson Lunatics, I was hooked. And as you know, Wes, if I'm in town, I'm at the game.
Yep.
But what was really neat is my family didn't move to Kalamazoo until April. I had their flight redirected to Minneapolis for the NCHC finals. They were supposed to meet me in Kalamazoo. That was when they were formally getting to Kalamazoo and we were going to move into our house. And of course we had bigger fish to fry in the frozen face-off. So they met me there, but they missed the hockey season in Lawson. So the Bowling Green opener was their first game, and I'd been talking it up like, this is amazing. You wait till you see this. And my wife and kids are a little spoiled. They go to a lot of sporting events, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds great, cool." And we're my wife's headed there with the kids, and I'm obviously there already. And she said, "Hey, it's a school night. I just want to prep you. I may leave like second period ish to take the kids home." Everybody stayed until they're like, "This is amazing." And now my son, if he doesn't have a soccer game or something else going on, he's coming to the hockey game with me. Loves hockey, and how can you not? I mean, that environment is electric and super fun.
Yeah, that NCHC finals, I really liked that game being a UMD fan, and I made sure that I was going to go. I talked with Ethan Frank's dad, and oh, sorry, I'm puppy sitting right now, so but little bit of a different atmosphere being in an NHL arena, and then also having the UMD contingent there. But Western brought some good fans, and then I showed this year at the Michigan series that was on NCHC TV. I showed my brother and his girlfriend. I said, "Look at this arena. This should be in every arena just because it's so packed." And I really want to get to a game in Kalamazoo just for that same reason that you said. It would just be a super fun atmosphere.
It is. We'll save a seat for you in the Lunatics, man. Come on down.
I haven't sat in the actual student section in a while, but I like my seat. I like being able to watch the guys score goals. So
you have good seats and you have a seat back.
Yep, I got my own space. No one's touching me.
And you're scaring the players.
A few of them, both home and away. But you were kind of talking about how like the difference in, a team like UCLA versus your Oregon State, and we kind of see like that disparagement in the NCHC. You have smaller schools like Miami, Western, and then the big hockey schools like North Dakota, UMD to some extent, Denver, who's won national championships. And I think everyone who we've talked about, like their favorite place outside of Lawson is the Ralph, in North Dakota. If it were an opportunity for Western to get something like that, or to make renovations to Lawson, how much of what Lawson is right now is a priority to keep that kind of feel, but give the players and the fans coming in an experience on par with like a North Dakota experience?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I really think that you can do both, Wes, and it is a priority. I sit in Lawson. It's a wonderful historic venue. It's a hard place to play, man, and it's because of those students. And as I said, it's energizing. It's super fun, and at the same time, I walk around the arena and I talk to our fans, and they all tell me this could be a much better facility, and the amenities aren't as good, and the seats aren't as good. And frankly, I wish we had more seats. I think we could easily, with our market, get another 2,000 to 3,000 people in there every game. So you've got to find the balance. If we want to remain competitive in hockey, we have to address our facilities. We have to. And sometimes addressing your facilities means getting creative, appreciating what you have and finding ways not to lose it, but embracing modern amenities and some of what our competitors have, like North Dakota. I mean, when I say what's great about North Dakota, it's they're sold out. Okay, check, we can do that. They have really fancy seats that are super comfortable. Okay, check, we can do that and still sell out and still have fun. They have great concessions. There's room in the concourses. So they've figured out a way to do both, and I hope we can too.
Yeah, I mean, because we've seen a lot of players come through, and they may not be the high draft picks, but we've seen guys develop. Like Ethan Frank, probably the most recent one, went from a guy who wasn't drafted to signing an AHL deal and led the country in goals coming from Western Michigan. We're kind of seeing that right now with the season that Jason Poland's having, 3 hat tricks in a month. Ryan McAllister, who was kind of lights out in the AJ, is coming through and showing that he can produce at this level, which I think is surprising a lot of folks. But they're not like the high caliber draft picks or players that we see like places like Michigan come or even North Dakota, who they get a lot of draft picks. And it's do you think the atmosphere that Lawson has on its own is able to turn somebody, or are we losing out on some of these players because we lack in some of those other areas?
Well, I couldn't tell you specifically why somebody's choosing Michigan over Western Michigan or North Dakota over Western Michigan. There is a success profile there that I imagine you're looking at a Michigan, you're looking at a North Dakota, like they've been able to break through, right, and consistently get to Frozen Fours. And my opinion is that's probably more attractive to recruits than anything else. So then you have to ask yourself the question, well, how are they doing that, right? Is it history? Is it facility upgrades? Is it coaching? It's probably a little bit of everything. So what we have to do as Ace, we still maintain our identity, right? And I think we all like the fact that we're sort of the gritty blue collar. We're going to beat you with a different style of player. But we have to continue making investments in hockey that make us attractive to the type of players that help us beat North Dakota and Michigan, because we've done that before and we can continue to.
And I think you did nail it talking about the upgrades. Yeah, we can do this, we can do that, but we still want to keep that atmosphere and remain relevant in hockey, because you are playing in the best conference in college hockey. I'm trying to remember. 5 out of the last 6 national champions have come from the NCHC, and to be relevant in that conference is going to help bring recruits, and then it's going to help bring more championships and get that pedigree up. And I've seen it just the last few years where it's now we're playing Western, and it again with the balancing act, it's coaching and arena upgrades, better players, more upgrades, better players, and then you can compete, which you are going against the Big Ten. I mean, the other hockey conferences, they've been around, but the Big Ten, it's the Big Ten no matter what. So
Mm-hmm.
it's still you're still having to deal with that budget against those schools, at least hockey wise.
No question. Yeah, I mean the resource, again. I go back to the scale comment that I made in comparing a Pac-12 experience to a MAC NCHC experience. The scale of the Big Ten is quite different, and I won't say any names here, but even within our own league, I've got AD friends who would flat out tell me I've got a Division II athletic department with an NHL hockey team, right? And so I know where everything's going. Everything's going with my hockey program. And we've got a different set of circumstances and a different set of priorities. It doesn't mean that hockey isn't a burning priority, because it is. And again, I go back to finding the balance. It's like being in the MAC in any sport, really, right? You've got to be a little bit more creative and work a little bit harder than everybody else, and you've got to find great people and great coaches. And we know we've got one. I mean, there's a reason why we are where we are with who we have. And listen, the guy's finding innovative ways to stay good, right? This was supposed to be a rebuilding year for us, right? That's what everybody said. A rebuilding year. I will tell you, Pat never said it, but this was a rebuilding year. But what did Pat do? Pat went and hit the portal, man, which is another reality of our business now. And so instead of lamenting it, he went and hit it, and it helped us. Some of those disparities are going to continue to exist. You chip away by being successful, like you said, and I do believe Oregon State got that first national championship, right? And then they got elite athletes in baseball. It was totally improbable. A Pacific Northwest school where it rains every single day between Halloween and May 1st, all of a sudden is recruiting the best baseball players in the country. And why? Because they won a national championship and they can point to it. And so, again, I truly believe that hockey is one of the sports where we can do that at Western.
Absolutely.
How much did you know about the Lunatics before getting in here, and what were the expectations versus the reality of what you experienced that first day? Because I think you were on somewhere else talking about, like, people questioned your want to sit with the students that first night.
So I knew there was a student section called the Lawson Lunatics, because on my interview, when I visited campus, they took me to the ice arena and I saw that signage. And then I did a little bit of research and I'm like, oh, cool, they have a student section. Like, I was at Pitt, we had the Oakland Zoo, and they were awesome, right? So that's neat. They've got a student section for hockey. So I knew it existed. I didn't know the magnitude. And so I think, Wes, I like to have a little fun with social media every once in a while. And so when I got the job and I was coming back for that, my first weekend on campus was going to be that North Dakota series. the Lost and Lunatics are engaging people on Twitter. I'm like, I'm going to tweet at the Lost and Lunatics. I'm going to ask them if I can sit with them. I was serious. I was going to sit with them. But it's like, hey, hey guys, can I? And I literally said in the tweet, hey, do you mind if I sit with you? I need to learn your chants. All right. And honestly, I didn't know what the chants were. I need to learn your chants. And so there, of course, we're like, absolutely, Dan, come sit with us. So it was Friday of that first game. And there was a couple people on my staff who kept coming up to me during the day saying, hey, are you really going to sit with the Lost and Lunatics? And I said, well, yeah, I told him I was going to. And there was a young man who, probably an hour before I was getting ready to go over the ring, hey, are you sure you're going to sit with the Lost and Lunatics? I'm like, well, yeah, Jared, I told him I was going to. And then we get to the arena. He said, I'm going to come with you. And so he came down with me into the Lost and Lunatics. And of course, those guys and girls are awesome. They welcomed me with a Lost and Lunatic hard hat. I learned the chants and a few new words along the way. And we've been fast friends ever since.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff, even as soon as you got here, like you've done a great job building around the community that is Western, both with like some of the events you've held at Lawson, the meet and greet stuff you've done throughout all of the sports that we have here. And that was like an immediate kind of almost change from the previous regime. And not to, say anything bad about them. I mean, Kathy Beauregard was here for a long time and did a lot of great things for all the sport programs, helped us win, saw a CCHA title with the hockey team, saw a a couple bowl wins with the football team, New Year's Six experience with the football team. So, I mean, I don't think we can really take anything away from what she's done, but there has been a increase in the community involvement that I've seen with what you've done in your time here. And as a former student and now as still an avid fan, I do appreciate all of that stuff for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And again, Kathy is a stud. She's the best. And she's been an awesome friend to me since I've been here. I think, a lot of some of the opportunity and the community outreach just came from coming out of COVID. And people had just been closed up for so long. And I actually remember getting this job and thinking, this is the perfect time to become an AD because, hopefully, knock on wood, we're coming out of the pandemic and specifically all the quarantines and the safety measures. And now we can do things and have fun. And so couple that with what really attracted me about this job is that you've got a city and a community and Fortune 500 companies and alums that stick around and are invested. So you've got a community to have some outreach with. And you've got cool things and cool items going on off campus and on campus to sort of bring people in. And so I appreciate that you've noticed that will remain a priority for us. In fact, I think we could be doing a lot better. And so we're constantly talking about what's the next community step and what's the next kind of cool event that we're going to do, whether on campus or off campus.
Anything else, Mike? I mean, we're getting close to wanting to wrap up. I know you got some stuff to take care of with the news that hit today. Just so you know, there's a lot of people recommending Fersh also for the football job.
You know what? He hasn't applied yet. I'll call him tonight.
So just wanted to throw that, let you know that we did get some responses on Twitter asking you if he might also be up for that job, considering what he's done with the hockey team.
We will take that success for sure. That's kind of what we're hoping for and expecting. I got a chance to catch up with Fersh today. And that's, again, I go back to this job and how it's so different. And, you're in the middle of a major football announcement and dealing with all that. But, you find 10 minutes to talk to your hockey coach and talk a little hockey. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to work with all these different sports and to be able to engage with you guys.
So I have one last question, and then I think Wes has a follow-up question that kind of goes along with this. The first time that you saw/met Wes, and we ask this of everyone who comes on our podcast, what was your reaction to seeing this man having his face painted like Sting from back in WCW and in Bronco colors, just staring intently and ready to cheer on the Broncos?
I remember, whether or not it was the first game I was there or not, I don't know for sure. But Wes stood out immediately. I mean, Wes was one of those characters that I'm like, this is awesome. And you have to remember, I grew up in Pittsburgh and I was a Steelers fan. So like painting, like that's an expectation, man. Paint your face and have some fun. So I remember Wes stood out immediately, and I think I always tried to make a point to say hello. I think having fans that are uh, into what we're doing and supporting our teams and doing it in fun and creative ways is what it's all about, man. This industry is about fun. So yeah, we love Wes.
Yeah, we did have Trevor Gorsuch, a former goalie, and he said Wes scared the living daylights out of him the first time he saw him, and then every time he was like, "Okay, where's Wes? Where's Wes? I have to figure out where he is." And then Wes did scare him at K Wings game last year.
But yeah, and Wes is like approachable and kind of mild mannered and cool. So like you got this like crazy get up, and then you talk to him, and yeah, it's just a guy.
Yeah, that's kind of what like I've said a few times like. I use the face paint as a way of being more visually loud as opposed to physically loud. I think there's been a few times where I've definitely let my voice fly, whether it was directed at a player or a ref or what have you. But for the most part, like I'm pretty reserved. I suffer from PTSD, and I have since a kid because of a traumatic event. And hockey's one of those things that allows me to connect with more people, and that's what this pod is about, is like being able to connect over hockey. And it's something that I use to make connections because I have a hard time using my life experience to connect to people because not a lot understand or relate to some of the things I've been through. So it's still a learning process, and it's a way of putting up a fence, but people realize that I'm there to cheer on just as hard as they are, or represent the team like they do. So
that's awesome, man. Good for you. Yeah, sports are a powerful force. We're glad you're there with us.
And so anytime you or one of your little ones want to paint their face, let me know. I'll hook you up with some paint, and we'll get it going.
Tools. I get it.
Yeah, I think that was the follow-up question. What would it take for you to paint your face? I was not going to do it. It took a lot for me to put on that Broncos jersey. So,
yeah, Mike.
What would it take for you to paint your face?
Mike was in Bronco colors on Saturday.
Anything is possible. I'm always up for a good time. So we should talk, Wes.
Sounds good. All right, we'll let you get out of here. I know you're a busy guy. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, man.
And that'll do it for this one. It's gonna be a short one. We wanted to really have this conversation, let it sink in. We'll be back with a normal episode tomorrow, breaking down the other games, and because we broke down Western already the night of. So thanks again, and to everybody else, have a great night. Oh, pucks on net. Good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. Have a good night.